of oil gush from that ruptured pipe in the Gulf of Mexico every day. The world is watching. That's what the head of BP America said, making arguably the biggest understatement of the year since that accident happened 3 weeks ago today. 2 new Senate panels are investigating the oil explosion from that rig, the Deepwater Horizon. Meanwhile, the struggle to stop that flow continues. New options. As you know, there was a big concrete dome that was put on top of it. It didn't work. So now they're trying something called a top hat, which is basically a smaller dome to cap the leak, or placing a valve on the blowout preventer, which is the thing that is thought to have caused this explosion in the first place, putting a valve on top of that. We've got the story covered from Capitol Hill and from the Gulf of Mexico. But first, let's go to Capitol Hill. CNN congressional correspondent Brianna Keeler. Brianna, we know that BP is supposed to pay for the cleanup. They've agreed to do so. But the issue here is that the economic damages, the environmental damages, that's not nearly as clear. What have we got on that?
Yeah, this idea of what about the businesses in the Gulf that are losing money because of tourism. BP has long said that it's going to pay legitimate claims. But the question really is, what does that mean, legitimate? Well, listen to this exchange. I thought it was very telling between Democratic Senator Maria Cantwell posing rapid-fire questions at the head of BP America, Lamar McKay.
Obviously, we can't keep from being sued, but yes, we have said exactly what we mean. We're going to pay the legitimate claims.
Okay, so if it's a legitimate claim, a harm to the fishing industry, both short-term and long-term, you're going to pay?
We're going to pay all legitimate claims.
If it's an impact for business loss from tourism, you're going to pay?
We're going to pay all legitimate claims.
To state and local governments for lost tax revenue, you're going to pay?
Question mark.
Long-term damages to the Louisiana fishing industry and its brand.
I can't quantify or speculate on long term. I don't know how to define it.
Allie, could you hear that? Because I wasn't actually able to hear the sound. Were we hearing it on air?
He finished up with saying that he can't speculate on the long-term damage to the Louisiana fishery industry, so he wasn't giving a whole lot of detail about what he would pay. Are you able to hear me? Okay, sounds like we've lost Brianna. We'll try and get her back. But in the meantime, let's go to Venice, Louisiana. David Mattingly is there. He's at the closest point to where this explosion took place, and he's trying to measure what's going on from that side. David, you heard the head of BP America under pressure to say what they would pay for, sounding like they were hedging a little bit.
Well, I asked that same question of the CEO of BP just a couple of days ago. How many fishing seasons are you willing to compensate fishermen for if their catch isn't what it's supposed to be? We got the same answer. We will honor all legitimate claims. Again, trying to find out what they consider legitimate is probably going to be handled in a court of law.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got everybody here deciding what is going to be worthwhile here. Is it BP who's going to decide? Is it the fisherman who's going to decide? Again, this is probably most likely going to be handled by a court.
All right, so that'll be handled by the courts, and they're dealing with that on Capitol Hill. What they're dealing with in the Gulf of Mexico right now is that failed effort to put that massive dome, basically a big block of concrete, over the spill and funnel the oil to the surface. That didn't work. There was some slush that was created because of how deep and cold it is down there. So now they're going with something smaller than that.
That's right, and that setback has cost us about a week here. What they're trying now is a smaller containment dome that you described accurately. They're calling it a top hat. It's only about 5 feet tall, about 4 feet in diameter, a fraction of the size of the dome they were using before. They think the small size and the way they're deploying it this time will help prevent that buildup of crystals that clogged up the old dome. But they're not for sure with anything here because, again, they keep putting that asterisk next to every statement that they make, meaning we've never tried this before. We don't know if this is going to work. But they had this plan B ready to go. They're going to have it implemented sometime toward the end of this week. And if they are successful, Allie, they'll be able to capture, they hope, about 80% of the oil that's now leaking. They have another solution in the wings that they hope will work that they're going to implement called the top kill or the junk shot, where they're going to try and clog up the pipes down there and stop the flow of oil completely. That junk shot is not going to be ready until about 10 days to 2 weeks from now.
All right, and you know, somebody told me on my weekend show this week, I think they were speaking anecdotally, but they said we quite possibly have more information about the surface of the moon than we do about the surface of the ocean. You know, these things, you sort of think when we're in the habit of digging that deep into the ocean, we would know more about these things, but we apparently don't.
I kept pressing the CEO of BP about that. I actually said, look, it seems like you're pretty smart guys. You're drilling for oil a mile underwater. It looks like there wouldn't be anything happening that you're not prepared for. But again, he says that throughout the entire industry, this type of catastrophe, the chances of it were considered so remote that there was no contingency in place to handle this.
Right, and regardless of how remote it is, when it happens just once, look at the damage it poses. David, thank you very much for that. We'll keep checking in with you. David Mattingly in Venice, Louisiana. All right, we talk a lot about the education system on this show. China is promising to put more oomph into its education system.